Hello viewers, welcome back to my YouTube channel, English and Literature with Carol. In case you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and be ready to learn. We are here to have fun and learn at the same time. I know you're on holiday and I'd like to give you a few tips on how to make the best out of your holiday. If you've never imagined you can score an A in English, this is your opportune moment. Because when you follow these few tips that I'm going to give you, you will be an excellent learner. You will have maximum use of your time because you will be working smart. Now, in English, it's very good for you to have a planned way of revising for your Kcse or for your normal exam, that's end of term exam that you will be sitting for, opener exam that you'll be sitting for next year when you open school. Anytime you want to do very well in English, you have to do a smart way. You have to be in a focused mind where you will revise for your papers paper-wise. When you revise for English, you consider the paper-wise approach. Now, what do I mean when I say paper-wise approach? I mean that you should know in English you have the 3 papers. That is English paper 1, 2 hours, English paper 2, 2.5 hours, and English paper 3, 2.5 hours also. In these 2 hours of English paper 1, a good student knows that he will be preparing for anything that will be tested from Form 1 to Form 4. You have to be a great learner who knows the tricks that the examiners use. You know, if you need to pass, you need to know what the examiner thinks. Learn that psychology of the examiner. What does he think when he's trying to test you on that? For example, in paper 1, because this one is a functional skills paper, you'll be tested on functional writing. These are skills that you will use even outside there, even after you have completed schools. These are very important skills. In Form 1, you may have paid attention to a few elements that you were taught. You are introduced to how to write a diary, how to write letters. You are first given the formats of addresses, and then you're given friendly letters, packing lists. You're going for a holiday. Maybe you want to go and visit your relatives, or you're going to Bali for holiday abroad. You don't need to pack blindly. So these are functional skills that even the Kenya National Examination Council tests on, and you have to be very good with it. How do you become good with functional writing? By the formats that I'm going to give you. A very easy format. I know you can see what is written on the board. The first thing that you must do, you must pay attention to, is that you know the format of every element of functional writing. A title is marked. A packing list for a tour, for example. Journal on a place that I visited. I'm giving you titles, examples of titles that you will use when you're preparing a functional writing, because first of all, you must know, like this year 2023 Kcse journal has been tested. The previous year, a speech was tested on. Do you know the title is marked? So the title is marked. Learn those titles, a report on, minutes of, an advertisement of, notice, something like that. That gives you a title. Still in the format, it is learnt, and it consists a third of the marks that you have been given. It is learnt. So when your teachers are teaching you, be very careful. Pay attention to that. When you're revising, know that this is the information you are preparing for, and learn it at heart. Wait for those functional skills. There are many. There are over 46 of them. From Form 1 to Form 4, anything can be tested on. So keep mastering, especially what you have already covered. The next thing that you must look at when you're preparing for functional writing is the content. How do you get content in functional writing? It is always in the question. Remember, you have to stick to what the examiner wants. That question that the examiner has tested you on. A few members attended this meeting, so I'm giving you an example of content in minute writing. If one sent an apology, 2 members who are not part of the club members were invited to give pieces of advice to the club. There was the agenda, so that will give you the content of what you will be covering. So which is the content? Learn it, revise for it, and it is very helpful. The other thing that you must pay attention to still when you're revising, and remember we said you're revising and working towards excelling and making sure that you will do very well in the forthcoming exams, is grammar, the language of communication. Remember, in English, all parts of language are marked. Do you know how to use full stops? Do you know how to use capital letters? Do you know how to use capitalization at the beginning of proper nouns? Names of people start with capitalization. Spellings. When you want to write, for example, a packing list, which is the PACKI that you're using, not the PARK. Those spellings of words are very important because this is a language paper. So learn it at heart. Choose 2 elements per day of functional writing. Today maybe you can cover how to write an email. Tomorrow have fun in the kitchen and write about how to write a recipe, how to cook biryani, for example. Write those, practice, because practice makes perfect. You become perfect when you write, which is very okay for you to continue practicing. Now, another element, another preparation. Remember, you have said for these 3 days, for example, I will be practicing functional writing, and tick them off. Make a list of all the functional writing that you want to revise for during the holiday. Tick them up as you revise. Make a list of them in an orderly manner. Master them in an orderly manner so that you do not leave out any element of functional writing. Now, what do you do in question 2? What is tested in paper 1, question 2? Question 2 is normally called the cloze test. How do you revise for cloze test? Be interested in now this one you can integrate with the literature books that you have. Remember, we said you do not ignore your literature books. It's a long holiday. You can actually learn a lot using your literature books. For example, in Fathers of Nations, pick a whole paragraph and now leave out those blank those words. If it is the parts of speech, maybe an article there, you leave one out. If it is a noun that has been used, leave it out. Practice with the books that you have been given. Also, adventure in reading the newspapers. Do not assume. By the way, I've come to realize that the newspapers nowadays are very suitable for students. If it's the Daily Nation, for example, the education column, if it's the news they are covering, leave out, read those stories, and then now, at some point, leave out a cover, for example. Get a passage there and cover the nouns that have been used, the adjectives that have been used. You only need 10 marks. And later, about 2 days later, try and fill that blank. It's a very good way of revising, and it's a fun way of revising. Consciously know that the examiner wants you to learn all the parts of speech. How are nouns used, for example? How are adverbs used in a sentence, for example? Remember, when you're revising for a closed test, grammar is marked, and that is the grammar that you want to look at. Capitalization is marked. If there is a dash that has been given there with that was preceded by a full stop, know that you must start those words with a capital letter. And in the closed test, remember, you're looking for only one word, not two words, one word for every blank. Now, let's go to question 3. What is tested in oral skills? Question 3. These are 30 marks. What is tested there? What are you revising for during the holiday and having a lot of fun? Remember, you don't have to stick to always start with functional writing. You can do very well even when you start with oral skills, because in fact oral skills is fun. And which are some of the most tested areas? I'll give you 3 areas that have been most tested in the Kcse. Remember, we are preparing for a national exam also. Apart from you being an expert in the language, you also have to remember that you have a smart way of revising for oral skills. A poem is tested on, poems are tested. What is tested in poetry? I'll let you know. Oral narratives are tested on, which is very okay. Oral poems. Do you know you can be tested on a song? The short forms, those are tongue twisters, riddles, proverbs. All these are tested, so make sure you know them, the short forms, yeah? And remember, that one is in oral literature. So question 3 can be either the literature, the general literature that is tested on, or the oral literature. Now, how do you prepare for this question? These questions mostly test on performance. How would you say the following words? How would you say line 1, for example? Because it is testing on performance. That means you will pay attention to the verbal and non-verbal cues to capture and maintain the audience. How do you make a narrative interesting, for example, to your audience? This question requires specific answers. Be very specific. When you want to do well in this paper, quite specific. If you want to say, how would I make a performance interesting, for example, if I want to talk about Kenya, my country that I love, I am in love with my nation. Oh, Kenya, my love. If I want to use gestures, do I say Kenya, my country? Those are not meaningful gestures. So I will talk of, even in my answer, I would use meaningful gestures. For example, I would use meaningful facial expressions. I would have tonal variation, appropriate tonal variation. If, for example, I want to make my performance in a narrative interesting, and this is the hare talking to the elephant, I would use mimicry. I would mimic what the elephant would say. The elephant cannot talk like a hare, for example. So I would consider, when you're preparing for that, give things that give the actual answers. Do not try to guess what you would say. And remember, you have been given that question there as a sample. So pick out the specific examples there. How would you capture the attention of your audience before you start maybe a narrative, for example? How would you capture your audience attention? Maybe you'd like to clear your throat. Story. I'll use a beginning formula. Remember, I want to be as interesting as possible. Make sure you have a specific way of answering these questions. When you already have the functional skills of doing this, assume that you have your audience that you are getting to entertain. Remember, this is a functional skills paper, so have fun when you're revising this. Get your small brother and your small sister, narrate to them, be that entertaining narrator. If you see they did not enjoy, maybe you did not dramatize your work, that one will give you a lot of practice and you will do very well. Now, my audience, there's a lot to cover in oral skills, a lot to cover. It's not only in the literature elements that I have talked about. There are also things like interviews, etiquette, debating skills that you can look at. So did you learn something? You have to utilize this holiday or any kind of free time that you have. English is a very nice subject that you can pass and do very well in, excel in. So thank you for listening. Keep subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thank you for always being here, and share my content, share. Have a lovely time. Goodbye.